It is the gray cloud that comes over you and obscures all positive thought. You are living in a state that is not to you frequently worth it. You would, for that moment, prefer to be dead.
It's a real illness, and it's something that the person can't control when they are experiencing it. I call it the thief in the night. It comes in and so disables you that it renders you helpless, and you really can't do much. And if you feel like you have nothing to live for, if you feel completely hopeless, then what's the point of getting out of bed?
Oh, I remember you.
It's hard because I know it's an uphill battle. I know what life is going to be like for him, and I wish it was easier. My greatest fear would be that he would be susceptible to suicide.
I think I could have avoided a whole lot of unnecessary pain if I had been able to be more honest with my husband, of all people. Why would I want to hide anything from him? And that just speaks to the stigma associated with depression, that I could hide something that big from him, do whatever I could to trick him into thinking that everything was okay.
It doesn't say I'm just going to affect the rich person or I'm just going to affect the poor person. The mental illness covers all different races, nationality, and no matter how much money you got.
It's horrible. I mean, it's like somebody's dying in the family, and it's very hard on everyone.
There were a lot of times when I said, I don't know how much more I can take, how much more of this, can I bear? Try as we might. This was a moving train that we threw ourselves on the tracks to stop, but we realized that eventually we could slow the train down, but the train was eventually going to run over us.
Between the medication and the therapy, I got better. No matter how bad it is, there's a better day waiting.
My name is Gina Stevens. I grew up as a figure skater. I'd say depression has ruled my life for 5 years of my life. I first remember being depressed when I was about 16 or 17 years old. My mom used to be really frustrated with my diagnosis. She used to think, why am I saying I have to take medications for the rest of my life? Why am I being so negative about it? I don't need to take the medications, and kind of this snap out of it attitude of, why are you assuming this? Why are doctors telling you that? I mean, she would be angry about it, or she wouldn't want to talk about it.
I thought she was having a period that was difficult, or I don't know what I thought, but what I said was, for heaven's sakes, Gina, starch up your good Irish spine, and life is a pendulum. It goes down, but it goes up the other side, so just get on with it.
The person who has mental illness already feels shame. They already feel embarrassment. You're uncomfortable talking about it. There are times when I wish I did have something that was accepted in society, that people didn't look upon as so negative.
It takes me about 30 minutes to go through each one of my medications to set up my trays, and this is my tray for the week. And these are the pills that I take on a daily basis.
Earlier in her life, she'd been a gymnast and a swimmer. I met her on a swim team, and she held a national record. She had been working in gymnastics and attending Stanford University, had a very bright and promising life and career, except for the depression.
My depression started when I was 16, and that's when the sadness, the overwhelming sadness set in.
She spent a lot of time in bed with the drapes drawn and was pretty much incapacitated at that time.
I would be unable to move, and I would scream out of frustration into my pillow and cry because I couldn't function.
You have no interest in life, and nothing at all interests you. Your part of you is dying inside, and there's nothing you can do, and it's horrible. Depression is such an evil disease that it makes you feel like nothing matters anymore in your life. My name is Ras Irani, and I was born in India. Back in India, when I was like 17 or 18, I had racing thoughts, and I didn't know what that was. Finally, I met a psychiatrist, and I told him that I have these thoughts, and he called my dad, and he said, I need to be hospitalized. What do you think about my depression, Papa?
It is my fault.
Why
I think it is my fault. When we were young, I used to bring all these religious books.
Oh, that's not your fault, okay?
Yeah, and you were reading it, and then you wanted to find out God, what is the purpose of life, and you started all these things.
When I talk like this, it hurts them. That's why I don't tell them all these things. I can talk to my parents, but what can they do for me? I just want to ask, what can they do? What answers do I get from them?
Oprah was on one day, and she had a young man named Andrew Solomon who wrote a book called The Noonday Demon. And as he began to describe what was going on in his life, I thought, dear God, every word sounds like Gina. And I picked up the book, sat in the parking lot, and began to read. And I read for 3 hours. Every word was a description of a suffering girl that I had, in my lack of knowledge, invited to simply get over it. To this day, I regret it a great deal.
For the first time, she actually realized that it was really an illness. It was just like having a physical illness, but it was a mental illness. And so she then became more helpful. She then became more understanding. She understands now that it's something that there's a biochemical imbalance in my brain, and that I can't just stop taking my medicines. I can't just pretend like everything's okay and it's going to go away.
She doesn't have any longer in her brain what I have in mine, or yours, or anyone else's, except those who suffer from some form of depression. And that was a startling moment to me. And you spend a lot of time speaking to whatever you think is up there, whether it's God or Buddha or the great blueberry muffin in the sky. It's immaterial what it's called. But you just have to know there's something bigger than yourself, and you hope to heaven whatever it is watching and will please do something to help your child. Please.
I'm Chuck Spielman. I was born in New York City.
And I'm Amy Spielman. Chuck and I have been married for 40 years. We had 3 children. We now have 2 children. Our daughter Jenny died 5 months ago. She suffered from very serious depression. She would swing from being fairly normal to seriously clinically depressed. and she suffered for about 10 years. It came on when she was about 19, which is a time when serious mental illness does come on for people.
We began to see signs that there was something there more serious than being a teenager, much more serious, we thought, than the grumpy times that a teenager has when they adjust. And when we began to notice the gray shadows settling over Jenny, we thought about and got her into therapy.
And we watched Jenny go from this vibrant, alive girl to spiraling down and down and down and down. We watched her go from the bed to out on the balcony to smoke a cigarette to back to bed. That was it. She just could not function. Oh my God. She feels like she's done nothing with her life. She said that she knows that we've suffered because of her. And she feels like she should get out of our house. She said that she feels like she's a burden to the family. Everything about her is about her being sick.
Mom and Dad, I love you so much. This has been the best day ever possible. It was so great sharing this day with Eric. I know I've been a nerve wreck so far, but I love you so much, and I hope our relationship stays the way it is all the time.
If 29 years ago, when Jenny was born, God had said to us, I'm going to give you a child, but you're going to have 18 wonderful years with the child, and you're going to have 11 years of hell. What do you want? I would have said, I want my child. And whatever we've been through, it's been worth it, because we had a wonderful daughter for 18 years, and the experience of trying to save her, which, as painful as it was something that taught me love and compassion, and to forge a common bond to try to help our child.
It is the gray cloud that comes over you and obscures all positive thought. You are living in a state that is not to you frequently worth it. You would, for that moment, prefer to be dead.
We breathe sunshine out of the falling rain. We breathe hope of a new tomorrow. Fill my cup again. I've seen the
I'm Peter Yarrow. I'm a folk singer and an activist. I've been together with Peter, Paul, and Mary for going on 49 years. Depression was a word when I was young that just meant gloomy and feeling down. Oh, I'm depressed. But the idea of depression as a clinical state really didn't enter my vocabulary until, I would say, the 1970s.
This is a special love song that I wrote in New York City when I was feeling very, very lonely. The seagull in the dusty dawn is floating on the wind, his wings are still.
You know, I had great difficulty getting out of bed, but in those years, I was able to perform.
Mary Beth, I love you, and the city is so empty. I cannot find my comfort in the beauty of the morn.
But I would get off the stage, and I remember sometimes falling into the arms of Jackie Turner. I couldn't lift my body up. I began to feel something that became more intense, which is that life was an endless stream of events that held no hope. The eradication of hope.
the magic dragon lived by the sea.
My singing always was a way of both eliminating depressive elements of my psyche and expressing them at the same time. I consider myself to be the luckiest person I know. I adore my work. I have the most wonderful children. I'm a grandfather, and that's unbelievable. And I don't care how fortunate you are to be surrounded by all the things that life can bring you. A depression can annihilate you. It is a demon.
It doesn't say, I'm just going to affect the rich person or I'm just going to affect the poor person. The mental illness covers all different races, nationality, and no matter how much money you got.
Come here. Sit. Sit.
I don't think he knew how to solve the problem without getting angry. And I think this scared him when he got so mad. He just sheltered himself.
Just really real down on myself and just isolating and not wanting to be around people and get paranoid. I guess it's like being in the middle of nowhere and no help. The difference that's been to keep me out the hospital is therapy. I do therapy every other week.
With a psychologist?
With a psychologist. I got a good support system. Doctors, friends, family. You know, I don't have nobody that don't accept who I am. Dropping people from my life that are prejudiced towards my illness is a must. There's a wide variety of things that people out in the world thinks when they come across a person that's depressed, or it carries a prejudice and a stigma, that's for sure. People like that become toxic, making me sicker or making me feel worse or making me feel bad.
There is stigma, gigantic stigma. You have cancer, oh, how terrible. The phone rings off the hook. What can we do? Tell us what we can do. You have a mental problem, no one speaks of it. It's not heard of. Because there must be some nasty little secret here. It's a mental problem.
People, they don't want to be around people that are depressed. A lot of times people are like, oh, you have depression. It's really hard. You know, it's like if I meet somebody new and we become friends, do I tell them that I have this disease? I mean, eventually they're going to find out.
I've tried doing all the eHarmonies and chat rooms on the computer to try and meet people, but I always am honest about my mental illness because if someone's going to love me, that's a large part of who I am. And I feel that they should know about that. And as soon as they find out that I suffer from a mental illness, I don't hear from them again.
I came from a Japanese heritage. Both of my parents are Japanese. And I was raised in a very strict, conservative environment. Very typical of Japanese families is that mental illnesses are not understood, certainly not acknowledged, and not spoken about in the family, for fear of that societal judgment of, uh-oh, there's something wrong with that family. You don't want to marry into that family. You absolutely, in the Japanese culture, want to hide that at all costs. The people who know about my illness, I can count on less than one hand. With my parents, unfortunately, because they don't understand the illness, they are very much worried that the word will get out that their daughter is sick. And God forbid that should happen, because the family name will be ruined for life. I, in my work environment, actually work with traumatized people. And so it's very possible that my employer would feel like because I have an illness that I would not be able to work with my clients. When I was interviewed and in my applications, they did ask me about my health background. The application did include that. And of course, there was no way that I was going to put that information in.
I recently had to give up my job as a physical therapist, an outpatient physical therapist, which I love. I love my job. I love helping other people because I can't do patient care anymore. My depression is too unstable and I'm too undependable.
Here I am, 45 years old, having to live with my mother, depend on my mother, not work after doing all this training. I love medicine, you know, I'm very passionate about it, and that still, it hits me quite frequently how horrible that is. I started experiencing my first episodes of depression during medical school. All I could do was stay in bed. There were times when I didn't even get out of bed to go to the bathroom. And I didn't tell anybody at that time how depressed I was. I still managed to get through medical school. I have not been able to work during these 2 years. In fact, I've been in the hospital twice for each time for over 30 days. When I was in the hospital, I filled my time with making pictures. A lot of them sort of showing how I felt more than anything else. Here I was feeling angry, which I often felt when I was depressed. Here was a piece that's all black, and this little orange spot is this little ray of hope that I just kept hold of. And that little ray of hope really helped me.
The one word that comes to my mind is hell, is I feel like I'm living in a prison in my mind. I feel like things are never going to get better. I feel like the hopelessness I have, the sadness I have, the lack of motivation, the lack of direction are never going to change. That I'm always going to feel the way that I feel at this moment. And the only way for me to escape those emotional feelings is really to sleep. And so that's why I sleep for such long periods of time, because it's the only way to get away from it.
To sit and watch this fashion plate of a young woman in her night clothes for 4 days running, this immaculate girl, not able to wash her face or comb her hair.
It's too overwhelming to brush my teeth. You know, I think of that and I think that's crazy. I mean, what's so difficult about that? Or what's so difficult about changing my clothes or taking a shower? But it might as well be climbing Mount Everest.
Like any other mother, I would trade places in a moment. To watch her suffer is unbearable.
The toll that it takes on parents, you know, who love their child, and all parents do, is very difficult.
Jenny's depression was, the whole family was depressed. It's pervasive. Everybody feels it.
There was a period of years where my mom was constantly in bed for 2 or 3 years. I just remember her never getting out of bed. Even during high school, I would be the child left with the teachers coming out going, "Is someone coming to get you?"
My daughter says that she felt that that was what all kids lived with, was a mother in bed, and she would be responsible for getting her brother up out of bed. He was 2 years younger than she. And she took on a role at the age of 7 of being mother to Brent.
I just remember the lunches really stand out to me because kids would have lunches and I would have to try and scrounge for whatever I could find to somewhat make a lunch, and it was embarrassing.
She felt that our marriage was causing her to be depressed. In fact, she's told me that, and that in order for her to get over those feelings, to get past those feelings, that it was necessary to end our marriage.
Very often, it tears apart families. It tears apart husbands and wives, I know. And Chuck and I have really been blessed, and we work at staying together. You know, we were always on the same page with Jenny. A lot of times when you have emotionally disturbed child, you end up fighting with each other over it. And to Chuck's credit, and I guess to my credit, we never did that.
Okay, can I wash it? Do you want to eat it whole or do you want me to cut it? Okay, I'm going to wash it first, but... I wanted a divorce. I wanted out. I wanted to escape, crawl out of my skin, start a new life somehow.
Whatever she feels in the moment, especially when she's depressed, she tends to project that backwards and forward. And so whatever she's feeling in the moment, that's the way it's always been, and that's the way that it always will be.
There's this anguish that is so fierce that I equate it to being on fire, the pain of burning alive, where it's just like you just want anything to happen for it to end because it's just so awful.
Our marriage was in trouble. We were starting some marriage counseling, and the counselor brought that to the forefront right away, that this is number one on your issue list. Before the trouble in your marriage, the depression needs to be handled. And until that time, I had no idea how important depression was in her life and in our relationship.
My depression started affecting every aspect of my life. I wasn't able to hold it together anymore. And I blamed my husband. I thought, well, you know, maybe if I had a more interesting husband or a more exciting lifestyle and I wasn't tied down to this marriage and this house and these kids, you know, then I wouldn't be depressed.
When the partner that I've been with for the last 13 years tells me she's not sure that I ever made her happy or that we ever belonged together, that's a pretty shocking thing to hear.
I was kind of delusional, I guess, in my beliefs, just trying to look for anything outside of myself that I could blame. I didn't feel like I could change myself any more than I already had. I felt like I had tried everything. So I thought, it must not be my fault. I'm married to the wrong person. I shouldn't be a stay-at-home mom. Maybe I shouldn't be homeschooling. Maybe I shouldn't be living in California. Maybe I need to run off to Africa and be in the Peace Corps. You know, something. I need to change my life. And I went so far with it that my husband was just convinced that I was leaving. And I'm not sure he still totally believes that I'm back and that I'm committed to the marriage.
Eventually, I stopped trying to help lift her out of her depression and just stopped talking. And that was just as bad because the silence was very powerful to her because one of the things that happens with both of us is that we reflect each other's moods. And so when she's down, then I start feeling down and it reflects back. It's this really vicious feedback loop.
I think my worst mistake during this depression over the last 3 years was not being more aggressive about getting the help I needed and not being upfront with my husband about what was going on with me, letting the guilt and shame make my decisions for me instead of advocating for myself.
My needs weren't being met because it was all she could do to take care of herself. She has things that she can do that meet my needs, like giving me a hug, giving me affection, telling me that she loves me. Those are incredibly powerful things. And just hearing that she needs me.
I think that when I was so depressed and so in despair and my thinking was so muddled that I thought I wanted to end this marriage and I was doing everything I could to destroy it, Steve had enough commitment and confidence for the both of us. And it was because of his unfailing faith in our marriage and the way he just held on tight and wouldn't give up and got the help that we needed. It's because of that that we're still married. And I'm just so grateful that he was able to be strong enough for both of us when I couldn't be strong for anybody.
Should we play some baseball? Oh, jeez. Okay, do a trick, Jeffrey. Do a trick, like hang by your knees or something.
I ended up with a diagnosis of bipolar illness. So adding a mood stabilizer to my antidepressant has made all the difference in the world. I feel really, really different. I feel not depressed for the first time in... I forgot what it felt to feel like this.
When my medicines work, it's such a difference in my life. I mean, it's not like my depression is just situational or just environmental. I mean, I really, when I look back on the times when as I say, when my medicines have worked, I live such a different life.
The doctor put me on an antidepressant, which I had never tried before, and within 6 weeks, my life turned around 180 degrees. I was out of bed, I was shopping, I was talking, I was laughing. I felt the world return to color.
When the meds are working, it seems as though nothing could possibly be wrong until the meds stop working and they need to be sorted out again. And that's a nightmare that I have come to know all of these patients dread.
I think my number one concern every time I have tried a medication has been, if it works for me, when is it going to stop working? And will there be another one to take its place?
These are the list of medications that I'm currently taking for my mental illness and the side effects of my mental illness. And then these are the medications I have taken in the last 15 years. It goes on, and on.
Some people with taking an antidepressant, when it increases your anxiety level, you need to take something for anxiety. I take a medication that causes my tremors, so I take another medication to decrease the tremors.
Because of the medication, I get panic attacks. I never had panic attacks in my life because they give you all this medication, then they get you in panic, and they give you something else for the panic attacks. So they make you worse. They make you depend on meds more and more.
These side effects can sometimes be as severe as the illness.
One of the most difficult side effects of having a mental illness and going on medication is the weight gain. I used to weigh 130 pounds, and I shot up to 275 pounds.
I have a hard time losing weight. I'm hungry all the time. I was up to 280 pounds. And I have tremors. The tremors are much worse if I don't take medication for them.
Sometimes I couldn't pronounce my words. I would stutter, sexual side effects, and constipation is like the worst ever you have been in your life. And the medication makes you feel like you don't have any feelings left at all. Like it takes away all your emotions, I guess, you know.
Are you on medication?
No, I'm not on medication.
I don't like medication either because I don't want to be an addict of no kind. I don't want to be a prescription addict. And he's seen that through. They're prescription addicts. And I think that's why he would back off from it, because he looks at them and he probably saying, no, I'm not going to take that because it's going to make me act like that too.
The doctors say it's a chemical disorder or whatever, brain chemical. But how, I'm asking a psychiatrist, can you prove me in a laboratory that I have a chemical imbalance in my brain? And they don't have an answer for that. And the irony is that the doctors say you need the medication. How can you be sure I need this medication? How do you prove that I need this medication? and they put you on more medication. When you say something, they put you on more. But the thing is, the doctor, if I ask him medication, he puts me on like it's a drug that I want. I want this drug. Okay, you want this? Is your doctor or my doctor? Doctor, give me some. Okay, you want? Yes. Can I have some doctor? Yeah. They're like drug pushers, you know. Like I can ask him and he gives me.
It's such a hit and miss. It absolutely is. I mean, it's like at this point, I feel like my doctor's spinning the roulette wheel and just, closing his eyes and, spinning around a couple times and, okay, well, let's try this now.
I think I can be more forgiving, actually, to my psychiatrists because I understand much more how hit or miss finding the right medications is. That it's, there's no way of taking a test from your brain and saying, oh, here's the chemistry you need, this is what'll help you. It's really a trial and error. So these medications can have bad side effects, but right now they also have wonderful effects, which is they're keeping me happy.
We've gone back and forth on the medication aspect. I've had the school recommend it because they feel that he's withdrawn and that he has kind of like a flat appearance in class and kind of shuts down, and they worry about him at school. But when I take him to the doctors, they are always against medicating. It's always a last resort.
How does it feel when you're depressed?
Really bad. I don't feel good. I'm depressed. Feels like you're really mad or something and you're mad at yourself. I get mad at myself all the time.
He withdraws. I'm unable to reach him or comfort him. He will feel bad about himself. He'll say that he's a weird kid, that nobody likes him, blames himself for everything that's going on around him that's negative. I think he realizes he's different. I think he struggles with that.
Feels like you're in a world that you're trapped in, you're the only one, and you feel alone. Really sad.
There's been several times when Gage was depressed where he would curl up in a ball, and as a mother, I was unable to reach him.
I get really stressed out, and I get mad. Sometimes I yell and scream.
I'll say there's brain chemicals in your little head that are telling you that it's your fault, and it's not true. Even though your brain is telling you it's true, it's not true. People don't understand depression, especially in children, and his schoolwork is affected. Even though we explain to them his needs in the beginning of the year, they just don't know how to deal with it. I think that they think there's something that I'm failing at as a mother, or something must be happening at home. And when I explain to them, this is something that runs in our family, and we're helping him cope, and we need your support at school. But in the classroom with the wrong teacher, it can be a nightmare for him.
In high school, I used to come home and cry a lot.
You still cry all the time?
I basically have no tears left.
If I'd have known that Anna was depressed early on, I'd like to think that, we would have done something, that we would have addressed it. That maybe she'd have gone to see a therapist all these years, but who knows if that would have really helped, I don't know. Certainly as sick as Anna has been at times, I don't know that talk is going to really make much difference.
I was very, very, very depressed for a long time. This is before I had a doctor or a therapist or anybody. I was 17 and I had been plotting to jump out my window. I wasn't sure if that was going to kill me or just injure me badly, but I wanted to jump out the window, so I took screens out and I hid them. And my mom pulled me back in. I had my hands and feet out. I was ready to jump out the window.
I and my wife at the time You know, we downplayed it. Oh, it was just a threat. She wouldn't have really done it. It's not that far down.
Nobody really paid much attention. I love my dad, but he wasn't taking me seriously when this was happening. I said to him, Dad, please take me to the hospital. I'm very, very sick.
At the hospital, they took it seriously and they kept her overnight. They kept her actually for a few nights. But we didn't know what was going on. And I guess we were in denial. Ordinary people from time to time will experience that kind of depression. Someone dies or something really bad happens and, you know, 5 minutes later you're okay. I think what Anne experiences is different. It's much more profound and it just goes on and on.
No? Yeah. This is after Phoenix. My greatest fear would be that he would be susceptible to suicide. He's said it probably 5 or 6 times through the years. At one point, he made a gesture to get a knife from the kitchen, and you know, I think that was the first time that I took him to a psychiatrist.
Sometimes I say, I wish I could kill myself. Murder. I don't know. I don't know why. It just pops up. I just say it.
His preschool teacher told me that Brent was unique. When he was 7 years old, he was diagnosed with major depression. And at the time, I was also suffering from depression, and it was difficult to make sure that I got the treatment I needed, plus the treatment he needed. This is a picture of my son, Brent, when he was 12 years old, a year before his death. In 1994, he hung himself from a tree in the backyard, and I came home and found him. The earth stopped moving. I became totally frigid, and I could not respond to any kind of emotion. I felt as if the world were completely black. I think if he'd gotten the right diagnosis and the right medication, it could have made all the difference in the world. It would have made the difference. I'd have a son.
What situation would I say I'd rather be dead? Being tortured? Yeah. That's torture. This is torture.
I was extremely suicidal. Because of my religious beliefs, I couldn't commit suicide because I believed that I would go to hell. I was hopeless. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Couldn't maintain a relationship with friends. Lost all of my friendships. And I really felt like I was destined to just live in this painful, terrible place. So I prayed to God every single day to kill me.
When the first time I walked to the hospital to see her and how she looked, and absolutely it just tore my heart to pieces to see her in the state that she was in. It's not an easy thing at all to watch your child go through that sort of state.
There is a verse in the Quran about suicide, about not killing yourself, and that verse is directed at the Prophet Muhammad. God told him not to harm yourself, for indeed God has been most gracious to you. That verse has helped me through a lot of hard times when I'm feeling right at that edge. That verse has helped me that God has been gracious to me. And every day that I give myself another chance whenever I'm feeling suicidal, it seems like I have the best day. It seems like it's the most wonderful day, you know, and I consider that a gift from God.
A couple months ago, I wanted to take my life. I had a plan. I was going to take 3 bottles of pills. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I felt frantic about it. I felt almost like a cat that's caged, like pacing back and forth, like I needed to do this now.
She went up, closed the door, and I called suicide hotline and said, this is what my daughter's doing. What do I do? I'm scared to death. And he said, you go to her door and you say, it's your life, and if you wish to destroy it, you have that right, but you are not going to do it under my roof. You have to get dressed and go elsewhere to do this. And I thought, what if he's wrong, you know? I was paralyzed. What if he's wrong? And I said, I don't think I can do that. And he said, do you want to help your daughter? I said, of course I want to help my daughter. Why would I be on the phone to you? And he said, all right, put the phone down and go upstairs and do precisely what I said. And I did, trembling in my boots. And I managed to get it out with the tears streaming down my face. And I went back downstairs, and about a half hour later, she came down, and she said, well, I guess I can get through one more day.
Suicide is not the answer. No matter how difficult and hurtful it gets, and no one can tell me how terrible it gets, because I know how terrible it gets. No matter how bad it is, there's a better day waiting for you, and you have to try to do your best to go through it. Call a hotline, call a friend.
Find a group. Find a support group. Find those people who nod their heads up and down when you speak, and they don't even know they're nodding their heads up and down. It's reflex action because they know so well what you're saying. They feel so much of what you're saying.
I was different. I've been different my entire life, and I didn't know that anybody else was like me until I started coming to the group and hearing similar stories.
You really need, as my mom would say, we need to walk in the moccasins of somebody that's gone through clinical depression to understand what it does take to get out of bed. You're sick. It's like you've broken your leg and you're going to rehabilitation. It's the same thing, although there's the stigma attached. And here we're trying to break that.
In cognitive therapy, they taught us about GRAPES, which is an acronym. G is be gentle with yourself, R is relaxation, A is accomplishment, P is pleasure, E is exercise, and S is social. And in cognitive therapy, they told us that we should try to do every one of these every day, and I did. I actually did it for about a year, and it was a tremendous help in adding structure to my day.
Unless you're living with the disease, you don't really know the disease. So in order to really know the disease, for us to come together and discuss it helps me to understand what I'm going through.
We struggle, I think, so much and compare ourselves so much to the ordinary person that you feel always like you're an outsider in the world. So that by coming to the group, you feel like you're in a place where people understand and you can be open about what your illness is.
I tend to isolate a lot. Like today, I stayed in bed until like 2 o'clock, and I just made it on the bus, and my big thing was to come here tonight. That's a huge accomplishment because, you know, I got out and I did something, and this group has really become a home for me.
A lot of times I'll deny that I even have this disease. I'm not really ill. This is just something I'm using because I just don't want to deal with things, so this is my excuse. I'm not really ill. I'm not this, that, and the other. Sorry. And it's just a disease that just lies to you all the time.
Jill, can you get some tissues, please?
The act of coming here is courageous at times, good, all of the time as far as I can see. We think we're swimming in this alone, you know, in the beginning until we get to a support like this. And we're not. And, you know, not wanting to get out of bed, all kinds of stuff, you know, is pretty universal for us.
You're not alone. You're not the only one on the planet who is feeling these things and thinking these things and wondering, what is happening to me? I'm not myself, but I don't know why.
Don't be ashamed. I think if you hide your depression from the people you love most, the people who are most in a position to help you are not going to know that you need it. If you try to be strong, try to do everything, try to manage your life as best you can, and try to act stoic, you can really fool the people around you. And the only person you're hurting is yourself and the people that you love.
Knowledge is power. And when people have that knowledge, they treat their loved ones with the dignity they deserve, even if they're being symptomatic. And that makes such a difference to a person who's feeling the hopelessness and despair of a mental illness.
You recognize her?
No. I love that one.
Don't underestimate what this can do, and do everything in your power to make sure that they get the help they need, and not to just accept that feeling crappy all the time is a way of life, because it's not.
If you think that there is an inkling, like, well, any little possibility that your child could be depressed, take them to a therapist. If my mom had taken me to a therapist at that age, who knows?
If you're fortunate enough to have the time to research it before you put your child into a facility, it's very, very important. Get references, go on the internet, do whatever you can.
Advocate for that person. Help people recognize if they're not getting appropriate treatment, if their treatment is ineffective. Just the fact that somebody's in therapy or seeing a psychiatrist doesn't mean they're getting effective treatment. If they're chronically depressed over a long period of time, they need to do something else to attack that depression.
There is hope. Technology is improving daily. There is a type of treatment plan for everyone that's on that is depressed, so there is hope.
The most successful treatment that studies show today is a combination of medication and therapy.
I have always done a lot of talking therapy because research has shown that it's the talking therapy along with the medication that makes a significant improvement in a person's life. And exercise is so important in overcoming depression. It balances out my moods. It pumps good endorphins into me. So if I use my tools and what I've learned, and if I'm taking my medications faithfully, it's called being med compliant, then I am lifted up again.
I can try to exercise. I can try to force myself to go outside. I can try to force myself to focus on something other than just my life and my depression.
This particular award was awarded to me by NAMI San Diego. The National Alliance on Mental Illness recognized me as Recovery Advocate of the Year. I couldn't even speak to someone back in 1996, and now I'm giving presentations in front of hundreds of people.
I really admire her for being proactive and getting involved, not just to help herself, but to help other people with her condition.
Hi, I'm Gina Stevens. I am the founder and coordinator. I started this 3 years ago. I saw some information about walks being done, but there was no walk for suicide prevention that had ever been done in San Diego before, and so I decided that I would take it upon myself to start the walk for suicide prevention, and not just for suicide prevention, but also to reduce stigma around mental illness.
She founded the Walk for Suicide Prevention in her area. She used her gifts, and she made something good come out of it.
I've struggled with severe clinical depression for 20 years now, and I think that I'm proof here that you can still have hope, you can still make things work, you can still make your life joyful and successful. Thanks. Something inside me wants to live. Something inside me wants to continue to be a caregiver in the sense that I help people, since it's not in physical therapy anymore, hopefully it'll be in mental illness, to help people to get through things that I've been through and to show them that they can come out the other side.
The tools now for fighting it are far better than before. There is no shame in being sick. And if you are treated well and intelligently, You will get better. Carry on, my sweet survivor. Carry on, my lonely friend. Don't give up your dream. Don't you let it end. Carry on, my sweet survivor. You've carried it so long, so it may come again. My friend, it shall come again. Carry on, my sweet survivor. Carry on, my lonely friend. Don't give up your dream. Don't you let it end. Carry on, my sweet survivor. You've carried it so long, so it may come again.